Welcome, everyone. I'm Blake from Bourbonr. This is the fourth episode of Bourbonr Live. Tonight, I'm joined by Chris Haynes. Chris Haynes is a bourbon enthusiast, longtime bourbon friend, and also an admin in the Bourbonr Facebook group. So, figured we'd jump on tonight, talk some bourbon, talk about kind of how we met and got this whole thing started, and really what the role that community plays in bourbon today, as well as review several different whiskeys together. So. I sent him two bourbons and one American whiskey, and then a little mystery sample as well, because it wouldn't be Bourbonr fun if I didn't throw in some kind of blind tasting or a little bit of a surprise. So, Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Blake. I appreciate the invite. I watched the Bourbon Community Roundtable broadcast. I watch your broadcast, so it's nice to be able to join and have a little input tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And, kind of looking back, man, what was it? Has it been probably 4 years in a row we'll meet up at Florida, Georgia, and drink some bourbon together? So it's funny,
So.
you just – and it's one of the things that I love most about bourbon is you meet a lot of great people. You have this opportunity to try different pours, every year. Well, I usually bring at least – a sample or a small bottle of Stag, because that seems to be the go-to. And then, you'll always provide something dusty. So it's like we have this routine of trying something, what was it? I think you said for like the first 5 years you tailgated, you always had a bottle of Stag and would drink through it. And then all of a sudden the craziness hits. And then
looking back on that, yeah. Looking back on those days now, that was like 2006 to 10, 11-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And getting a bottle of George T. Stagg wasn't as difficult as it is now, nor as expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my go-to for that weekend. And I always take a bottle. And my friends and I and visitors and whoever came by, we'd usually empty a bottle that day, that Saturday. But looking back now, I'm like, man, secondary value, we drank thousands of dollars.
You could have paid for your tickets for the rest of the 10-year
Exactly.
Stretch had you just held on to those, but that's not nearly as fun. So
we had a good time.
Yeah. And I was trying to pull these comments up really quick, but it doesn't seem to want to work. So can you see the comments on your side at all?
Yeah, I can see them here.
Are on your phone or?
Yeah, I'm just scrolling up here. Matt Dolman says, nice. Michael Hartzell says, hey, Randy Compton. Greetings from Lexington, Kentucky. I can see him if I scroll up here. You might have to scroll left or right.
Oh, okay. It's saying,
I can see we've got 31 people watching, it looks like.
Well, it's not working for me. So, if you just see questions that people are having, if you just feel free to kind of shout them out. So, well, let's jump straight into it. We should probably start with the malt first.
Okay.
So this, I kind of teed it up a little bit while we were getting everything settled. So, from Oregon, Bull Run Distillery. This is a 5-year malt. Ooh, man. That it is a single malt from Oregon. Oregon and Portland in general have a really big distilling and craft scene. So it's cool to see what they are putting out these days, because like I said earlier, 5 years for a craft whiskey of anything, whether it be malt or bourbon or rye, that's a big number. So I believe they're going into used barrels just based off the color. It's definitely pale. This beer is bought into. Yeah, they don't mention it here, but just based off color alone, you can see it is that lighter amber. It's not quite straw, but it's a little darker than that. But I get a lot of cereal from this one.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't like that nose. It doesn't smell like, obviously it doesn't smell like bourbon, but
not what you like from a whiskey yet.
No.
Yeah, the single malt category is interesting. I feel like if you came to bourbon from Scotch and are a huge single malt drinker, or even more like on the Irish whiskey side, to me it drinks more Irish whiskey because there is a lot more of the fruit. There's a little bit of caramel, a little bit of toffee. And when I'm drinking, I don't drink a ton of single malts or malts in general, but when I am, I like more of a roasted dark chocolate, and to me it's a little lighter, a little fruitier.
This is definitely, I think, light and thin in terms of just how, yeah, it's, I'm not a huge malt guy. We had a whiskey tasting recently with my buddies. Everybody had to bring some sort of American whiskey that wasn't bourbon, basically. Wheat whiskey, we had rye, we had all these other stuff, and we had some Westland malt that one of the guys brought. This definitely reminds me of that. I'm not a huge malt guy. But I can see what you're saying here. If you're kind of in between Scotch or Irish whiskey, you're trying to kind of build a bridge between that and bourbon, this might be a good choice.
Yeah, and that's what I think Westland's been a big one, obviously, to kind of push the craft distilling movement forward, and they're doing it through American single malt. American single malts, they're fighting to get its own category. So I think we'll just see more and more as these continue. The problem is right now you can call just about anything American single malt because, it's one of those things that the TTB hasn't regulated just yet. But I don't know. I mean, I definitely like it. It's just, I feel like I have to be in the right mood to drink this. I feel like this is one that I'd probably cap off the night with. I don't get any flaws out of it, but as far as my preference goes, yeah, it's not something I'm going to pull on a regular basis. So I'm going to rinse my glass real quick because there is one thing, if you stay with the same, if you're going bourbon, it's not that big of a deal, but to put malt in here and then in your glass and then try to go straight to bourbon, sometimes I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm still picking up some of those old notes. So
I got fresh glasses. I came prepared here.
Yeah, that would have been the smart thing to do, but I just wing this whole thing. It's
all right. So let me read you a couple of these comments since you can't see them.
I was able to get let's see. I got Josh Peters, Love Westland. Is that the most recent?
No, there's one more after that, but there's.
Oh, there it is. Dog with curry and coconut milk.
We got Stephen from Raleigh, North Carolina, Jack from New Hampshire, Brent in Atlanta, Pam, first time here. That's cool. Welcome, Pam. New to drinking bourbon and enjoying it. And then Stephen had a question for you. So if this was Bourbonr Eats segue, what dish would you pair with it?
Good question. So with this, if I was pairing it with something, yeah, I don't want to say like oat bran because it does have a very cereal note to it, but I feel like I'd almost put it last with like some kind of vanilla custard, like almost a creme brulee or something like that. I feel like it is a little bit sweeter, but there's some brown sugar notes. So my wife's giving me the "you don't know what you're talking about" eye. So, but I stick by that suggestion. So if you do try it, that would be a good one. So all right, next up, let's do the barrel strength. So typically you would want to go by proof and work your way up, but the barrel strength's 116, and then the final bourbon's 100 proof. So it's not too big of a jump. So let's jump in and do a little bit on this. So this is it's 116 proof, batch 19. I don't know if it's age stated. I don't see an age statement on here. So it is distilled in Indiana, bottled by Bull Run Distilling in Portland, Oregon. So that means it is MGP. I'm not sure which mash bill, but oh man, yeah.
It smells like, I'm not trying to be fancy pants like you with your descriptions.
No, go for it.
It smells like a Krispy Kreme glazed donut, honestly.
See, so I'm getting like like buttery corn, and I get that glaze. It has that sweetness. To me, whenever I smelled this one and tasted it the other day, I thought for sure it was one of the Tennessee bourbons. You see a lot of Tennessee bourbon come on the market. And yeah, I mean, it just has a really good graininess to it. There's a sweetness.
Definitely sweet. I like that. I like that smell.
And I get a little bit, I just get a ton of it's like buttery corn. It is, there's brown sugar, there's caramel, that kind of stuff. But overall, it's like a little bit of spice and leather on the end.
It's definitely got more spice than I was thinking. That's good.
The nose is a little confusing, right?
Smells way sweeter than it tastes.
Yeah.
I like that though. It's kind of nice. Catches you off guard.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that's probably in like what would you say, 6 to 8 year range if you had to guess?
Yeah, I'd say on the lower end of that.
Yeah, especially on the higher level of sweetness, as it ages, more time in the wood, it's extracting more of the tannins, more of the leathery notes. You get a little bit of that on the finish, but not much. Let's see, Jack asked if do I have a preferred MGP product? Assuming you mean like bourbon rye or high rye bourbon, regular bourbon, wheated bourbon, all that stuff. Not really. Their high rye bourbon's probably one of my favorites. Smooth Amblers, the ones that they were putting out a few years back, are probably some of my favorites. And then the Smooth Ambler cask strength rye that they would do for a while, that was some of my favorite whiskey to begin with. Any favorite MGP products for you, Chris?
Well, I was going to mention Smooth Ambler, but and this has come up with you before when it comes to the whole single barrel issue. I had one that was like really good and stood out. Then I got another one and it was a different barrel and it was about the same proof, so I thought it was going to taste close, and it was so different. I didn't enjoy it at all.
Yeah, that's the oh man, I stand by that. I still get more what we call pushback on that single barrel post I did, but it is the truth, and I get it. It is kind of the fun of it too, to be able to try it. But if I'm spending $50-$60 on a single barrel, I kind of want it to be good. Like, I don't mind playing that game of roulette on $30-$40, but if I'm going above $50, like, I expect to be able to drink it and really enjoy it.
And I'll tell you something. This was, I think he wrote 116 point something, 72.92% or proof.
4.2, yeah.
This bottle I've got is similar. This is actually kind of a private pick, batch 1A. And we'll get to this in a second, but this is 121.32 proof, and doesn't taste like it. Like, I don't know where they're hiding all that extra proof, but it does not drink like that. And I thought the same thing with this. It doesn't taste like 116 to me, but that was nice. Much better than that malt.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move to the final one, which is technically it's an American whiskey. And I meant to ask them this. So American whiskey basically just means it can mean a lot of things, and I think that's most people's problem with it. Is it can mean there was up to 2% flavor added. It could mean it was just used in a reused barrel. It could mean it was 50% corn instead of 51% corn. Oh, is that one American whiskey as well?
Yes.
I believe if I'm correct that they're just using bourbon or their American whiskey sourced from MGP and putting it into barrel, or putting it in. This one is a Pinot Noir finished. So it's 10 years, but it spent 21 months in a Pinot Noir finished, or in a Pinot Noir barrel. So it is interesting to see, because you don't see a lot of finishings going nearly 2 years. You know, a lot of them it's like, man, it's 6 months, 3 months, something like that. But that's more in the rum style where it's almost like a secondary aging. It's not a finishing, um, which, you know, I think is really pretty cool, because when I got to this, it's like butterscotch and just there's a little bit of sweetness, but I mean a little bit of the fruitiness, but you don't pick up on it like, you know, you get an Angel's Envy where it's so port heavy.
And this one that I've got, the private pick, is aged 11 years, and then they finished it for 12 months in a Pinot Noir cask.
Yeah.
So a little different.
Which all that kind of leads me to, I am trying to work on a Bull Run private barrel. So I wanted to see, you know, because they got a few options on, do you want to do this finish, that finish? Do you want to do just straight bourbon? So to me, this was like a home run. I've gone back to this several times since I opened it, and it is sweeter. It's very rounded nose, but it's 100 proof, and it drinks like, you know, 80 or 90.
And I hadn't had a lot of finished whiskeys. I just happened to get this one. We'll talk about this later, I'm sure, through a Facebook group that picked this.
An unnamed Facebook group, is it?
No, it's not the one you're thinking. It's a different one. But I had it the other night. It's like, wow, that's like, that kind of won me over. And this one that you sent me, I'm liking it. The color it's almost like got a hint of red in there, which is kind of nice. I like it.
It's got a slight hue to it, you know. We'll get real fancy.
Yeah, that's good. I don't think, have you done a private pick yet that they finished whiskey?
I haven't, no. So that was kind of the other exciting. Well, I guess I can kind of reveal this as well too, because it's about to come out. So I have my first finished whiskey private pick that will be available later this month. So I did a project with Finger Lakes Distilling and up in New York, and then Aaron Goldfarb, who wrote the book Hacking Whiskey, where we took ice wine, which, if you're not familiar with what ice wine is, so somebody's probably going to correct me on the exact requirements, but basically they have to pick the grapes within like the first 3 hours of the first freeze of winter. Because of that, the freeze, all the sugar comes to the grapes. They pick the grapes. It's very sweet dessert wine. So anyways, we took ice wine, put it in an old rye whiskey barrel, let that age for a little while, then dump the ice wine and put rye whiskey back into it. So it's an ice wine finished whiskey, or ice wine finished rye whiskey. And man, we did some experimenting with it, and like, I'm really excited to see the final product and to taste it. It just got bottled, I guess, this week. I think it was Monday. So yeah, be on the lookout for that one, because that'll be the first finished one. And as far as I know, I think there's one other Scotch maybe that did. And Josh Peters, if he's still here, he can probably jump in on this one. I think there's one other Scotch or someone else that did an ice wine finish. But other than that, I haven't seen it in the States. So pretty excited to see that one. But I don't know, the finishes are fun to play around with. You know, I think it just adds one more layer. And just some interesting notes if it's done right. You know, you don't want to cover up. Glenfiddich, there you go. He is still here. Okay. He's not being harassed by internet commenters, so he can still be here. But so it just adds another element. And, you know, you don't want to cover up the whiskey, but if you can kind of enhance it a little bit, you know, it kind of goes back to the cooking and adding sauce and that kind of stuff. Obviously, you don't want to put ketchup on a really expensive steak, but if you have an au poivre or whatever it is, or lobster butter sauce, that enhances the experience. All right. Jack's given us, all right. So Jack says ice wine is a type of dessert wine produced from grapes that have been frozen while still on the vine. The sugars and other dissolved solids do not freeze, but the water does, allowing for a more concentrated grape juice to develop. The grape the grapes is pressed from the frozen grapes. Yeah. So there's your definition. And if you don't get a bottle and don't but still kind of want to try it, what I was doing was just taking some ice wine and doing a rinse in my glass with it, and then pouring a little bit of rye whiskey in there, and it balances really well. If you have the right rye whiskey, I think there needs to be a heavy spice and a good base there, and it kind of stands up to the sweetness of the ice wine. So, all right. That is it for the tasting part. You have one more to go, or I guess I should say of my tasting part. So I'm going to let you try that. Sent it blind. It truly is blind because there was no hints given. It was just like, hey, here's 3 things labeled and then something with a question mark on it. So I'm interested to see what you think.
No, you did. Well, I don't know if you gave a hint away or not. I heard you say earlier it was 100 proof. But I could be
No,
wrong.
I was talking about the Pinot Noir finished.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
quick story about ice wine for you. My wife and I were in Vermont a few years back. We went to a place where they had wines and cheeses. You sample it. Both of us like sweet wine. We found out a couple that we liked, including an ice wine, and there were 2 bottles that we kind of decided we liked. And so I said, well, I'll get this one and you get that one. So I got whatever the other one was, and she was going to pay for the ice wine. And so my 750 milliliter bottle was like, I don't know, $14.99. And her 375 milliliter bottle of ice wine was like $29.99 or $39.99, something ridiculous like that. So, but it was good.
Yeah.
It was definitely good.
It's more of like a whiskey of wines. You're not going to pour yourself a full glass. You're going to pour yourself like a 2-ounce Glencairn of it and enjoy it. But there may or may not be some ice wine floating around here in a few weeks, so I'll get you some to try. Can neither confirm nor deny.
No.
Is this
My
the
wife purchased at least 1 bottle, I'm sure.
is this the are you trying the mystery sample
the mystery
yet?
sample here.
Okay. I'm trying to read your face.
It smells more like that malt than a bourbon. Let's see.
I'm sneakily pouring myself a little bit.
And when I got the sample today, I was going through my head because the sample, you filled that bottle not quite as high as the other one, so I figured maybe it was expensive. You didn't want to.
Well, I don't want to give much away, but that's more of just me I didn't have my little. I usually have a little funnel I fill samples with, and I didn't have it at the office, and so I'm like trying to hand fill and didn't want to pour it all over my desk. So don't read too much into the ancillaries.
All right, it definitely tastes not like a bourbon. Now that just means it's going to be the bourboniest bourbon ever. Yeah, it's not bourbon. What is that? It's light, it's fruity, it's sweet, it's very floral. It's multiple choice. I like it.
I'll give you a hint. Well, I don't even know what you want me to tell you. I'm not even sure what a good hint's going to be. Yeah.
I like it way more than that Bull Run malt.
Okay.
But it reminds me a little bit of that, just in the nose.
I will tell you, I think you're on to something. I won't tell you exactly what you're on to, but
maybe this is the Parker's malted whiskey. I never had that. Uh, yeah, my guess would be that. Or I don't even know. I'm not a huge malt guy. I definitely think it's malt or like I don't even know enough about Scotch or Irish whiskey to say it's one of those.
All right. So you will be correct in that it is a single grain product. You do have
Like quinoa.
you do have the grain incorrect though. It's not quinoa.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so not malt, it's a single grain. Not rye, I think.
It's Jameson. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, tell me what it is. I give up. I don't. This
All right. Yeah. So this
original.
is a 100% Jimmy Red corn bourbon. This is the
Nice.
so this is the Jimmy Red high from Highwire Distilling. This is actually last year's release, which was about I think it was only 2 years this time. So you get a lot of those younger notes, and that's what I was saying about the that's kind of what I was getting from the single malt was a little bit of the youth. So I think a lot of that comes through. But yeah, that was one. It was sitting there. I'm like, you know what? I want to get an unbiased opinion on it and see see how Chris likes it.
I think I've tried to buy a bottle twice now, and it's been sold out each time.
Yeah. Well, good news is there's going to be more coming in, and I thought this one was pretty good, but I thought this last batch was much better, and I think there was even some close to like 4 years old on this last batch that they did. So I thought that was good. All right, well, good job. You I feel like you hit some good notes on there. You know, it wasn't rye. Yeah,
Definitely wouldn't buy.
it does have a maltiness to it though, which is interesting. But all right, on to the next part of the show, which is the Bourbonr Facebook group. So those that don't know, Chris has been helping me out for probably 2 years now.
I think a little over 2 years now.
A little over 2 years now in the Bourbonr Facebook group. So earlier on, I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna handle what I can handle, and then you realize that just getting people to not be crazy at times. I guess that is a lot to ask when we're talking about the internet and it's about bourbon. So obviously guys are coming in after some bourbon, or people are coming in after some bourbon and just making some random crazy things. So don't want to talk about like people in particular, obviously, but what have been some of your more interesting experiences you've seen? For me, I think one of my favorites was a guy threatened to fight someone and the guy's wife and insulted the guy's wife, and then was mad at me that he got booted out and could not figure out why I booted him out for what he said. I'm like, I feel like this is a little self-explanatory, but that's always one of my favorite. Like, I mean, you can't really go through life treating people like this and nobody's ever told you that's wrong. I can't be the first person that says you can't threaten to punch somebody in the face and call their spouse ugly, and I'm telling you that's wrong. I can't be the first person to say that. So that was definitely up there for me. I think that's probably happened on multiple occasions now. But
we really don't have many rules.
Yeah.
The rules are no crotch shots and don't be a jerk, basically. And some people can live by those rules and some people can't. And so and you even mentioned in the rules itself, you know, name calling, stuff like that is automatically going to be booted if it's like in a mean spirited sort of way, not just giving a guy grief. And so a lot of times when I see stuff like that, I'll kind of, you know, give them a warning. I'll just sometimes I'll send a message, say, hey, you know, watch what you're saying, blah, blah, blah. And 80% of the time that doesn't do anything. And they just keep going. And so then I boot them, and then I get a message from that person saying, okay, why did I get booted? Or I can't believe you did this. Or you let the power go to your head. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, because all this power that you're just wielding around is...
Right. Yeah. And my other favorite thing is I'll post something, a review or tasting notes on like the Bourbonr, your fifth anniversary pick that you did. And I liked it. And so I posted, okay, here's the notes. I liked it. You should get one. And then I had a couple guys like, oh, Blake just sent you a bottle and he's paying you and you're making all this money and you're forcing this down our throats trying to get us to buy it. I'm like, I promise you, he hasn't paid me anything.
It's all a big scam. We're just running. Yeah, the conspiracy theories do run deep on some of this stuff, but no, and really it is. I feel like probably 1% of the time it's like, oh my gosh, this is, there's been times where, because there have been like some more serious things that happen with just crazy situations. I'm like, you know what, it may be better just to shut this whole thing down. If people are gonna take it to that level, even the guys who are people who are probably drunk and kind of keyboard warriors or whatever you call it, I'm not that upset about. But when people are like trying to make phone calls to people, and it's like, okay, is this really what it's about? But overall, I think the R in Bourbonr stands for revenue. That is, oh no. Overall, it's just kind of like the community aspect of it all. If I ever go anywhere out of town, I post in Bourbonr and say, hey, where should I be drinking? Is anybody in this area? And I can't tell you how many times I get the best selections ever. It's like the best TripAdvisor you could ever have, as well as, just meeting up and having drinks with people. Now, I say, 5 years ago, if I said, oh, yeah, I'm just going to have a drink with a friend from the internet, that sounded really weird. Now it's like, hey, once every other week, you're going to have a drink with a friend from the internet. So it doesn't sound as crazy. But no, it really is for all the kind of the craziness and madness that goes into it. The infinite amount of times we have to tell people, no, we try to keep things, no unopened bottle pictures, because it just causes issues. I don't have a problem with the one picture that you posted that was unopened, but that causes all kinds of other issues. And, at the end of the day, we want Bourbonr to be about drinking and community and talking about different bottles, and just sending a picture of a shelf and saying, what should I buy? Or just sending a picture of like 5 unopened bottles and say, look at this haul. That doesn't really spark discussion. It may spark a lot of jealousy or a lot of, people wishing they had the same luck, but that's kind of not what we're going for. So with that, any rules that you think, I put this, I think it was before the year went out, any rules, should we open up the unopened bottle pictures for dusty bottles?
Well, and I think that kind of creates, and you touched on this, I think, in an earlier discussion, okay, I have this bottle, it's old granddad, it's got a tax strip, I can't read the label, or you can't see the year, what can you tell me about it? And a lot of times that's genuinely, hey, tell me what I've got here. And a lot of time, well, not a lot, a few times, I think it's somebody just fishing, hoping somebody's going to PM them and say, hey, I'll give you $800.
Yeah.
But I think if that's the worst thing to come out of it, then,
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. I've let a lot of those just go recently, just because, the Bourbonr does have there's a lot of guys in there with a ton of knowledge. And so where else can you go? I know there's other groups on Facebook, so I'm sure you could go there too. But if you're in the Bourbonr group, I would like for you to be able to say, hey, what do I have here? I've done some research on the internet. I can't find anything out. So that's where I'm thinking we kind of start allowing those. And, then we gotta, it'll be a little more policing because you don't want, hey, check your messages and are you willing to sell it, because that'll, not trying to go down that road. But, I think getting more conversation about these older bottles, because more and more people are digging into their granddad's basement, their estate sales, their whatever it is. So that's where I think we could, see some additional value there. And I mean, honestly, to me, it's just fun to see some of these old bottles. There's some that get posted that I've never even heard of the label. I think it was in here, but there's like, apparently Chicago back in the day was on top of it, because you see like these private bottlings for like a Chicago country club or some bar in Chicago. And, obviously there's the famous ones like the Van Winkle Blue Smoke, and Delilah's has a few of their own barrels and bottlings. But overall, I think that's a good addition to the whole process. So,
well, and I think about the other groups that I'm involved in, and like, where else could I go if I found some old Jim Beam decanter at a garage sale and wanted to know more about it? Obviously, there are some other groups where that's not their role, that's not what they're there for. It's also, I have to keep in mind that today is like somebody's first day in the group, and it's their first foray into bourbon, and maybe they don't know how to use the search function to say, okay, me and my buddies are going on the Bourbon Trail. Where should we go? How many should we do in a day? Or what's the best place to go in Chicago? Because obviously those have been touched on before, but for them, it's their first time, and a lot of times they kind of get pounced on because there's people there who have seen this 1,000 times. But I also, another group that I'm involved in, a non-bourbon group, their main rule is just whatever you post, have it bring value to the group, or have it spark discussion. And looking like the guys who post the pictures of the shelf, their local store, saying what should I buy, or what's good, or what's a good deal. Those get on my nerves for sure. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I'm not into tequila all that much. But if I were, I would go to the store and take a picture and go to the tequila group and say, hey, tell me what's good here, because I think there's a consensus among people who are in the know of what's good and what's worth skipping. So
yeah, and that's where it's the tough part, because I've kind of branched off into some other spirits, and especially rum and brandy, and I've been that guy in a brandy group of, hey, what is this? So it and I was just looking at some statistics as well, and within the last month there's been 1,000 new members. On each day or every day there's about 3,500 post comments and reactions. So there is just a lot going on, and the guy who walks into the group and posts for the first time and then is automatically hit with a bunch of negative comments from people who are sick of it because they've been here for 2 years, it's hard to police that. But really neither side is wrong. Like, I see both points. If I'm in a group, I don't want to see the same thing popping up in my newsfeed every single time. But if I'm brand new to the group, I don't want to get bashed and lambasted for asking a simple question, But that's a part of it. And kind of going back to the community side, I mean, I know you're in a bunch of other groups, and really embraced like the bourbon community. I think to me that's what really grew bourbon just as fast as anything else. I mean, I know obviously marketing goes a long way, and there's tons of other factors, but really with Facebook groups and, you have like Reddit R Bourbon, you just see those things explode over the last few years. And I think it's an easy way for people to get connected and have an outlet to talk about something with people that share a similar passion, but maybe on opposite sides of the country. So you see kind of the same thing?
Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of those people who are watching who may want to know or care to know, there are days when we get 100+ requests to be in the group. And there are slower days than others. And there are days, like you said, we have hundreds of comments, and we all have regular jobs, and we're not sitting around just monitoring the group all day. Much fun as that would be. But the good thing is, and this is true no matter what group, and it's not just online groups. My quick story, my dad was a Southern Baptist minister. I grew up in the church, and he told me one day, he's like, you're going to meet some of the nicest people on earth when you come into this church. He's like, you're also going to meet some of the biggest jerks you've ever met when you come to this church. That's true there, and it's true in the Bourbonr group, and it's true in every other group I'm in. And like you said, me and you and 1,000 other people get tired of seeing some of these same posts, but we choose to not be a jerk and to not comment and say, "Hey, use the search bar, idiot," or "Why are you doing this?" or "Read the rules." And that's a choice that people make. But the good news is there's a lot of great people out there, and through the Bourbon group, I met a guy from up in Gainesville. I live in Ocala, and he's come to our little tastings we do here in Ocala. He's a great guy, Jonathan Richardson, and he shares a ton of knowledge with us. And we've taught each other a lot of stuff and stuff like that. And like meeting up with you, we wouldn't have done that if it weren't for this group. So I think there's opportunity to meet some awesome people, to get some good knowledge. And then there's also an opportunity to see some of the shadiness and the other shenanigans that go on, but that just kind of goes with the territory, I think, no matter which group you're in.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, and I've never heard that quote before, but I'm probably going to use it on like a multitude of different things. You're going to meet some of the best people you will in your entire life. You're also going to meet some terrible people. But it is true, and people think it's kind of isolated to bourbon, but unfortunately, it's just like where people gather, there's going to be conflict. I remember, I think it was my sister-in-law. She was in like a horse riding group or something on Facebook, and she was telling me how all these people were like, I don't even know the terms to even explain the story, but basically bashing them over, like, I don't know, like what saddle you ride or something. Just to me seems completely like asinine, but to them it was very important, and I put my value and my self-worth in this, and it's like, it's kind of like, what do you mean your favorite bottle is Woodford or something? Have you never had George T. Stagg? Are you an idiot? But you take it for what it is, and you kind of just roll with the punches in some of these things. So no, it definitely is a fun thing, and I've enjoyed it. Looking back on the last 5 years of Bourbonr, I was kind of hesitant on the Facebook group because I felt like there were already some good groups out there. But I mean, from a community aspect, I don't think there's anything that's been bigger for building the community portion of Bourbonr than the Facebook group, because that's where people go. I mean, I'll always get, whenever we do these things, if I don't do it on YouTube Live and I do it in Facebook, I'll get a bunch of emails from people saying, I'm not even on Facebook. How am I going to watch it? And I get it. Not everyone's on Facebook, but the majority of America is, and the majority of America is checking their Facebook, I don't know, like 25 times a day or something. So, I use it as an excuse because my newsfeed is basically just baby pictures and bourbon. So, they somehow go hand in hand. It's basically encapsulate Chris's life right now. Well, cool. Well, that puts us at right about an hour. So any other final comments, words, things you wish people knew about drinking bourbon in Ocala or being a Facebook bourbon admin?
I'll tell you this, because and you may have seen these, but basically, I see sometimes guys, I want to host a tasting. I don't know of a group in my town that does this. And so if you go back long enough in the Bourbonr archives, you can probably find me asking that question 3 or 4 years ago. And so I couldn't find anybody here locally that was, so I just started it myself. And I put the word out on Facebook and just said, hey, this is what I'm going to do now we do it once every 2 months. If you're interested, let me know. And so I had guys and girls who either liked whiskey, liked bourbon, or had no idea anything about it, but just like, hey, that sounds fun, let's do it. And so we've been going for over 3 years now. It's been a lot of fun. So I would encourage you, one, if you don't have something like that, um, do it. Just start it. The worst that could
Yep.
happen is you sit there by yourself and you got a couple bottles of bourbon. You have a good night by yourself.
Yeah.
Uh,
If that's the worst case scenario, we are
right. Yeah. But I've met some new people. I've turned some people on to bourbon. We've tried a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of other kinds of whiskeys that I probably wouldn't have tried otherwise, Japanese, Irish, Scotch, Indian, all sorts of stuff. Um, and the other thing to keep in mind for our group, opinions, but you can't argue experience. And a lot of times people will come in and they'll post their notes, or we had a tasting, even like I've posted, here's our results. For me and my 7 buddies, we had this tasting. And people will, you don't know what you're doing. You guys don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, no, we actually tasted it, and here's what we thought. Uh,
This was our notes. I didn't say
right.
this was your notes.
Right. It's like you are here. You're going to tell us, okay, here's what you should have thought.
Yeah.
And I've surprised myself even sometimes when we do it blind. It's like, whoa, I didn't realize that I really like this or I didn't like this. So one thing to keep in mind, and I try to say this a lot in our group, especially, of course, it's subjective, just like music, just like movies. I was sitting here last night with my daughter watching Mumford and Sons. On YouTube because I just wanted some of that music. But when I go to the gym, I don't want to listen to that. I want to listen to something else. Same thing when I'm having bourbon. Maybe tonight I want to have the early times 354, but tomorrow night's the Booker's kind of night.
Mhm.
And so taste change, your mood changes. Just because you might be the only person on earth who likes whatever it is you like, and good for you if you like Weller Special Reserve more than Weller 12. That's awesome. Drink it up. So just kind of keep that in mind that other people have different experiences, and we're all just here kind of to have fun and hang out and learn some new stuff. And I think that's what it's all about, rather than my opinion's right and yours is wrong, and here's why.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree, and that's I think it was actually Gary Vaynerchuk, who's like business guy, but he ran Wine Library TV, and he would say on reviews, he's like, how am I supposed to tell the New Jersey soccer mom that's been drinking the same, sweet Chardonnay for 20 years that it's bad? She drinks it, she loves it. Like, why am I going to tell her that it's bad? That doesn't make sense. And just because it is so subjective, I kind of pulled away from putting ratings on different whiskeys, and just do notes, kind of like you did on this blind tasting. You say, I kind of like it, but it's lighter, it's fruitier, it's this and that. Here's the notes I'm getting. And I feel like that's so much more beneficial to people, because as soon as you say, wow, this is incredible, go try it, you know, like you said, are you going to the gym or are you sitting at home and trying to relax? There's different things for both. So to try to say that there is like some gold standard of whiskey, just is a little what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. The bourbon's starting to kick in, but it's a little naive, I guess, to say that there is that gold standard. So, but all
Well,
right. Oh,
let
go
me say
ahead.
one
Yep.
more thing if I could, Blake.
Yep.
I think one of the most valuable things you can find isn't like this some unicorn bottle you're looking for. It's find somebody with like taste to you,
Mm-hmm.
um, so that when they try something and they say they like it, you're like, ooh, I need to try that. Or if they say, stay away from this, you're like, okay, we're kind of on the same wavelength. I want to keep my distance. Kind of like
Mm-hmm.
movies, music, anything else. Okay, we share this in common. If they like it, I'm probably gonna like it. If they don't, I'm
Yeah.
probably gonna. And I think that's really neat to find someone. Like, there's a couple names that I watch for in this group and other groups. Okay, what do they think of this? Because me and them are kind of on the same wavelength when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I think. Like, people want to jump straight in and finding like unicorns and crazy bottles, but the first 2 years of bourbon to me is just about figuring out what you actually like. Like, and you can hunt really hard for an Old Forester birthday bourbon, but if I hunt for that I don't even like Old Forester all that much except for 1920. And so 1920 is available on most shelves. So I'm not going to go chase after an Old Forester birthday bourbon because I don't care for it. It's not bad bourbon, you know. It's not to say that others don't love it, but to me, it's not worth it. So, you know, figuring out your own taste is one of the biggest things that I think people can get a little too caught up in the hype of the limited editions and that kind of stuff. So. You're all right. Well, let's close it out on that. So thanks again for being on. Thank you everyone for watching and those that commented. You heard it here first. There, what two announcements was new barrel pick coming for Bourbonr, be available on sealbox.com, and then next announcement, your dusty bottle picks that are unopened will not be deleted anymore. So big news. Yeah. So thank you everyone. Really enjoyed this. Always fun. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for the invite, Blake. I appreciate it. And thank you for those of you who got nothing better to do on Wednesday night. I appreciate you
I
coming
mean,
in.
what
That's
else
me
do you
most
have
of the
to
time.
do? Yeah, what else do you have to do? You know, you come drink some bourbon, just talk for a little while. I mean, I couldn't think of a better Wednesday night.
Good way to spend a Wednesday night.
Yeah. All right. Have a good night.